Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto reincarnated as Issei and stole their harem? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Echo of a Past Life. The last thing he remembered was the gentle hum of Konoha. It was a sound he had dedicated his entire life to protecting, a symphony of bustling market stalls, laughing children, and the distant, RHY. THMIC thud of kunai striking practice posts. He was old, ancient by shinobi standards, his body a roadmap of scars and battles won. His family, his precious people, were gathered around him, their faces a mixture of sorrow and love. He had seen his children grow, and their children after them. He had watched his village flourish under the long peace he had fought so hard to create. He was Naruto Uzumaki, the 7th Hokage, the hero of the 4th Great Ninja War, and his long, vibrant life had finally reached its end. He closed his eyes, a final, weary smile on his lips, and let the darkness take him. Then, he was ripped from it. A jarring, shrill bell pierced the serene silence of his passing. The scent of cherry blossoms and ramen was replaced by the stale, chalk-dusted air of a classroom. His senses, honed by a lifetime of combat and sage training, screamed at him. The comfortable weight of his Hokage robes was gone, replaced by a stiff, unfamiliar uniform. He snapped his eyes open, the peaceful image of his family shattering like a broken mirror. He was sitting at a desk, surrounded by teenagers. Sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating the swirling dust motes in the air. A man stood at the front of the room, droning on about something called Japanese history, a subject he knew intimately, yet this version felt wrong. Foreign. He looked down at his hands. They were pale, uncalloused, and weak. The hands of a boy who had never known a day of real struggle. A phantom limb of his own weathered, powerful hands ached in his memory. This wasn't a genjutsu. He had faced the best illusionists in the world. He knew the subtle tells, the cracks in the facade. This was real, terrifyingly, impossibly real. A flood of alien memories, not his own, cascaded through his mind. Issei Hyodo, high school student, notorious pervert, member of the perverted trio. A life filled with shallow desires, pathetic schemes to peek at the kendo club's changing room, and an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. The memories felt like a greasy film coating his own soul, and he fought back a wave of nausea. He, who had commanded armies and stood against gods, was now inhabiting the body of a fool. He subtly flexed his fingers, trying to call upon his chakra. Nothing. It was like reaching into a vast, empty well. He could feel the faintest spark, a dying ember deep within him. But it was trapped behind a seal more powerful than any he had ever encountered. It wasn't a jutsu. It felt like a fundamental law of this new existence, a cosmic lock on his very soul. Hyodo, are you even listening? The teacher's voice cut through his internal turmoil. He looked up, his gaze calm and measured. The entire class was staring at him. He could feel their disdain, their judgment. The whispers started immediately. Look, the pervert's actually awake for once. He's probably daydreaming about Ria-senpai's boobs. He ignored them. The taunts of children were nothing compared to the roars of a tailed beast or the scorn of an entire village. He simply gave the teacher a slight nod. My apologies, sensei. I was momentarily distracted. His voice was different. It held a quiet authority. A depth that didn't belong to the Issei Hyodo of the borrowed memories. The teacher, taken aback by the uncharacteristically respectful and composed response, just grunted and turned back to the board. The whispers in the classroom, however, changed from mockery to confused curiosity. The usual Issei would have made a lewd joke or cowered in embarrassment. This calm, collected street ranger was someone they didn't recognize. The rest of the day was a study in observation. He committed every detail to memory. The school's layout, the faces of his classmates, the social dynamics at play. He felt like a cage in enemy territory, gathering intelligence before making his move. He saw Rias Grimori and her peerage from a distance. Even without his sensory abilities, he could feel the power radiating from them. It wasn't chakra, it was something else, something dark and alluring. They carried themselves with the predatory grace of apex predators trying to blend in with sheep. He knew, with the certainty of a seasoned warrior, that they were not human. After school, he was packing his bag when a voice, sweet as honeyed poison, called his name. Issei-kun. He turned to see a girl with long, black hair and violet eyes. The borrowed memories supplied a name, Yuma Amano. A girl who had, inexplicably, asked Issei Hyodo out on a date. He felt the phantom excitement and disbelief of the body's former owner, and ruthlessly suppressed it. Amano-san, he replied, his tone polite but neutral. Are you ready for our date this weekend? She asked, her smile a little too bright, a little too practiced. His senses, though muted, were screaming. The air around her shimmered with a barely contained power, and her scent was wrong. It was the scent of ozone before a lightning strike, of something ancient and predatory hiding beneath a fragile human shell. He had smelled similar things on the battlefield, on beings who wore human faces as a convenience. I am, he said, his eyes meeting hers. He didn't fawn over her, didn't blush or stammer like the old Issei would have. He just looked at her, his gaze piercing, as if he were trying to peel back her skin and see the monster beneath. I look forward to it. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She had expected the slobbering fool from her intel. This person was different, composed, perceptive, dangerous. The date was a charade. He played his part, a polite and attentive young man, all while his mind raced, analyzing her every move, her every word. He led her through crowded streets, keeping to public spaces, giving her no opportunity to spring a trap. He could feel her growing frustration, her facade beginning to crack. Finally, as dusk settled over the city, she led him to a deserted park, a fountain at its center. This was it, the killing ground. Issei-kun, she said, her voice dropping its sweet pretense, I have a question for you. Oh, he asked, his posture relaxed, but his body coiled like a spring. Will you die for me? The transformation was instantaneous. Her clothes melted away, replaced by a scant, black leather outfit. 6 black, feathered wings erupted from her back, and a spear made of pure, searing light materialized in her hand. She was a fallen angel, and her name was Rainer. I had a feeling you weren't human, he said, his voice devoid of fear. There was no panic, no shock, just a weary acceptance. Of course, his first day in a new world would end with an assassination attempt. It was just his luck. You're smarter than you look, she sneered, her eyes glowing with malice. A pity it won't save you. Quote, she lunged, the light spear aimed at his heart. He moved. It wasn't the blinding speed of his full power, but it was more than enough. He sidestepped the thrust, the spear's heat searing the air where his chest had been. He dropped low, sweeping her legs out from under her. She grunted in surprise, stumbling, and he used the opening to create distance. How? She stammered, shocked by his reaction. The data on Issei Hyodo had painted him as a weak, worthless human. You talk too much, he said, settling into a familiar taijutsu stance. He reached deep inside himself, pulling on that tiny, flickering ember of chakra. It was a pittance, barely enough to coat his fists, but it would have to do. What followed was not a battle, but a dance of survival. Rainer was faster, stronger, and could fly. She hurled spears of light at him, each one capable of turning a normal human to ash. But he was no normal human. He was Naruto Uzumaki. He moved with an economy of motion that spoke of 1,000 battles. He used the terrain, ducking behind the fountain, using the trees for cover. He couldn't use his jutsus, but his body remembered the rhythm of combat. He closed the distance again and again, his chakra-infused fists landing with surprising force. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to understand. He was analyzing her power, her fighting style, her weaknesses. He landed a solid punch to her gut, forcing the air from her lungs. She retaliated with a desperate backhand, her wing striking him and sending him skidding across the pavement. He coughed, a trickle of blood running from his lips. This body was so fragile. You wretched little monkey, she shrieked, her rage making her sloppy. Why won't you just die? She formed a dozen light spears, a glowing corona of death, and launched them all at him. There was no dodging this. This was the end. As the spears closed in, he didn't feel fear. He felt a profound, burning anger. Not at her, but at his own weakness. He had promised himself he would never be helpless again. He had crawled his way from being a village pariah to its greatest hero. He would not die here, in this strange new world, in the body of a pervert. At the hands of this arrogant child. He closed his eyes and roared, a primal sound of defiance that came from the depths of his soul. He reached for that seal within him, not with his chakra, but with his will. He clawed at it, tore at it, demanding the power that was rightfully his. And something answered. The seal didn't break, it cracked. A torrent of raw, untamed power erupted from him. It wasn't his familiar, warm chakra. It was a violent, chaotic flood of red energy, thick with a malevolence he hadn't felt in decades. Kurama. Even in this new world, the old fox was with him. The energy wasn't controlled. It was a pure, terrifying pressure that warped the air around him, a demon's roar given form. The light spears disintegrated a foot from his body, their holy energy dissolving in the face of this primordial rage. Rainer was thrown back, tumbling through the air as if struck by a physical blow. She stared at him, her face a mask of pure terror. What was this power? It wasn't demonic, it wasn't holy, it was other. It was ancient and vast, and it hated everything. Just as the red energy threatened to consume him, a crimson light filled the park. A magic circle, intricate and beautiful, bloomed on the ground. From it, Rias Grimori and her peerage emerged. They were ready for a fight, but they froze, their eyes locked on him. They saw not Issei Hyodo, but a boy wreathed in an aura of such immense power that it made their own demonic energy feel like a child's tantrum. The surge of power was too much. The untrained, unprepared body couldn't handle it. The red aura vanished, and he collapsed to the ground, his consciousness fading. The last thing he saw was Rias Grimori's shocked, beautiful face looking down at him. He woke up in his own bedroom. The afternoon sun was filtering through the curtains. For a moment, he thought it had all been a nightmare. Then, he saw her. Rias Grimori was sitting in a chair by his bed, her legs crossed. Her crimson hair a stark contrast to the mundane setting of Issei's room. She looked at him not with concern, but with an intense, calculating curiosity. "You're awake," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. He sat up, his body aching but whole. He looked at his chest. There was no wound. He could feel the dark energy inside him, a foreign presence that now bound him. He had been reincarnated. Again. "You're a devil," he stated, not a question. She smiled. "And now, so are you. I've brought you back to life as a member of my peerage, my servant." He met her gaze, his eyes holding the weight of 100 years. Of wars and loss and triumphs she could never comprehend. He didn't look like a grateful, resurrected servant. He looked like a king who had been momentarily inconvenienced. "Welcome to your new life, Issei Hyodo," she said, her smile widening as she sensed the abyss of power hidden within him. "Or," she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "whoever you truly are." Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. A king, not a pawn. The silence in the room was a living thing. It stretched between the boy in the bed and the crimson-haired girl in the chair, a battle field of unspoken questions and measured appraisals. Naruto, now inhabiting the shell of Issei Hyodo, swung his legs over the side of the bed. His body was sore, a deep, cellular ache that spoke of being torn apart and forcibly stitched back together. He could feel the foreign energy that now permeated his being. It felt like a thin coat of oil over his own dormant chakra coils, slick and dark and wrong. "My servant," he repeated, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He looked at Rias Grimori, his eyes clear and unblinking. There was no gratitude in them, no fear, only a calm, analytical focus that she was beginning to find deeply unsettling. "You resurrected me to be your slave." Rias's smile was a practiced, political thing, meant to disarm and enchant. It had no effect on him. "A servant, Issei-kun. A member of my noble house. I've given you a second chance at life, a life of power and prestige you could only dream of. You saw that power in the park," he countered, his voice quiet but carrying an undeniable weight. "The power that saved this body from your fallen angel problem. You didn't resurrect a weak, perverted human out of pity. You saw an opportunity. You wanted to claim that power for yourself." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes tightened almost imperceptibly at the corners. He was sharp, far sharper than any of her intelligence had suggested. The issei Hyodo in her files was a simpleton, driven by the basest of instincts. This boy, he spoke like a commander, sizing up the strategic value of a new weapon. That power is the reason you're alive, she said, shifting her tactics. An ordinary human would have been torn apart by such an outburst. Whatever you are no longer human. As a devil, under my guidance, I can help you understand and control it. He stood up, testing his balance. He was weak, but the body was fundamentally sound. He walked over to the window, peering out at the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was a familiar sight, yet utterly alien. Tell me everything, he said, his back still to her. Devils, fallen angels, this power you use. Don't give me a recruitment speech. Give me facts. I need a clear understanding of the battlefield. The choice of words, battlefield, did not escape her. For the next hour, Rias Gramori, heiress to one of the underworld's most powerful families, found herself being debriefed. He absorbed the information with an unnerving efficiency, asking questions that cut straight to the heart of the matter. He asked about the Great War, the current political climate between the factions, the functions of the evil pieces, the hierarchy of the devils. It wasn't the fumbling, overwhelmed questioning of a newly turned fledgling, it was the interrogati on of a rival leader seeking to understand a new world order. He learned of her status as the king of her peerage, and that he now occupied the role of a pawn. The irony was not lost on him. It's time you met the others, Rias finally said, rising from her chair. The power dynamic had shifted in a way she hadn't anticipated. She had come here to call her a powerful but naive creature. Instead, she felt as if she had just negotiated a tentative alliance with a sleeping dragon. They're waiting for us at our headquarters. She created a crimson teleportation circle on the floor. He stepped into it without hesitation. His expression unreadable. The sensation of being disassembled and reassembled molecule by molecule was disorienting, but he bore it in stoic silence. They materialized in a grand, wood-paneled room that looked more like a vintage ballroom than a high school club. Akano Himahima, the queen, was sitting elegantly on a plush sofa, a teapot in her hands. Yuto Kiba, the knight, stood by the window, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword. And curled up on a loveseat, nibbling on a chocolate bar, was Kaneko Tuju, the rook. They all turned as Rias and Issei appeared. 3 distinct sets of eyes widened in surprise. They had been expecting the loud, bumbling pervert. They were met with a calm stranger who scanned the room with the practiced gaze of a veteran shinobi entering an unknown fortress. His eyes lingered on each of them for a moment, a flicker of understanding in their depths. Everyone, Rias announced, her voice regaining its usual confident tone, this is Issei Hyodo. He's the newest member of my peerage, my pawn. Akano's smile was immediate and seductive. My, Rias. He's even more handsome up close. Welcome to the club, Issei-kun. She let out a soft giggle, a sound designed to fluster and charm. He simply nodded at her. Himahima-san. His gaze was direct, appreciative of her beauty but untainted by the leering lust she was accustomed to from the old Issei. He saw the power crackling just beneath her skin, a volatile mix of the demonic and the holy. A walking paradox. His eyes then moved to Kaneko Tuju-san. He detected the faint traces of senjutsu in her aura, the refined energy of a creature in tune with nature. He recognized her lineage, or something akin to it, in an instant. A nekomata, a powerful one. Finally, he looked at Kiba. Kiba offered a friendly, if cautious, smile. Welcome, Issei-kun. It's good to have you with us. Issei has unique potential, Rias explained, choosing her words carefully. He demonstrated an incredible power before his reincarnation. I think it's best we gauge his current abilities. An excellent idea, Kiba said, his smile becoming a little more genuine. A spar was a language he understood. How about a little welcome match? Rias nodded. A perfect way to test your foundation. Kiba, if you would. They moved to the spacious grounds behind the old school building. The sun had set, and the moon cast long shadows across the grass. Kiba summoned a demonic sword, its blade gleaming in the faint light. He settled into a graceful swordsman's stance. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you, Kiba said. His tone kind. He expected this to be over in seconds. Naruto didn't reply. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the unfamiliar stiffness of the body. He had no weapons, no jutsu, no real strength to speak of. All he had was a lifetime of experience etched into his soul. He fell into a relaxed, open stance from the academy's basic taijutsu forms. It looked amateurish, almost laughable, compared to Kiba's polished form. Akano watched with an amused glint in her eyes, while Kaneko observed with her usual blank expression, though her focus was entirely on the new boy. Begin, Rias commanded. Kiba moved like a blur. His title of knight was well earned. He appeared in front of Naruto, his sword a silver arc aimed at his shoulder, a strike meant to disable, not harm. And then the impossible happened. Naruto shifted his weight, his right foot pivoting just enough. His body flowed like water around the strike. His left hand came up, not to block, but to gently UI'd the flat of Kiba's blade past his body. His right hand, open-palmed, struck Kiba's sword arm at the elbow. It wasn't a powerful blow, but it was perfectly placed, targeting the nerve cluster. Kiba's arm went numb, his grip on his sword faltering for a split second. It was all the opening Naruto needed. He didn't press the attack. He flowed backward, re-establishing distance, his calm expression never changing. Silence. Kiba stared at his tingling arm, then at Naruto, his friendly smile gone, replaced by utter disbelief. The girl's expressions mirrored his. It shouldn't have been possible. Kiba's speed was supernatural. For a human, even a reincarnated devil, to react was one thing. To counter with such precision and foresight was another entirely. Luck, Akano murmured, her smile fading into fascination. Kiba shook his head, a new fire in his eyes. No, that was skill. He charged again, faster this time, his movements a whirlwind of feints and slashes. He wasn't holding back as much. What followed was a masterclass in defense. Naruto was a leaf in the wind, never meeting Kiba's overwhelming force head-on. He used his opponent's momentum against him, redirecting strikes, sidestepping thrusts by a hair's breadth. He couldn't match Kiba's speed, so he didn't try. He predicted it. He read the subtle shifts in Kiba's shoulders, the tightening of his muscles, the intent in his eyes. He had faced down the Uchiha, masters of the Sharingan. Reading a swordsman's movements was second nature to him. He was a dancer in a storm of steel, and he was untouchable. He isn't just defending, Kaneko said softly. Her eyes wide. He's learning. She was right. With every exchange, Naruto was recalibrating, syncing his mind's muscle memory with this new, weaker body. He was pushing its limits, finding its breaking points. Kiba, growing frustrated, unleashed a flurry of sword skills, his blade moving so fast it left afterimages in the air. This time, Naruto couldn't evade completely. A blade grazed his arm, drawing blood. The pain was a sharp, familiar sting. Kiba saw his opening and lunged, his sword aimed for Naruto's chest in a final, decisive thrust. It was too fast. The body couldn't react. Instinct took over. A primal command, forged in the heat of 100 battles, screamed from Naruto's soul. Move. He reached for that crack in the seal, not for a flood, but for a single drop. A whisper of red, malevolent energy surged from the seal, coursing through his veins. It wasn't chakra. It was pure, raw power, the very essence of a tailed beast's rage. His blue eyes flashed crimson for a heartbeat. The world slowed down. Kiba's lightning-fast thrust seemed to crawl through the air. Naruto's hand shot out, catching the blade between his thumb and forefinger. The skr, each of metal against unnaturally dense flesh echoed in the night. The demonic sword, an artifact of the underworld, stopped dead, inches from his heart. Kiba's eyes widened in horror. He felt the RGY radiating from the boy in front of him, an ancient, terrifying power that made his soul tremble. It was a pressure so immense it felt like the sky was falling. Akano gasped, her playful demeanor vanishing completely. As a daughter of a fallen angel, she was sensitive to different kinds of power, and this was an abyss. Kaneko took an involuntary step back, her cat ears twitching, every instinct she had screaming at her to flee. Naruto shoved the sword back, throwing the off-balance Kiba a few feet away. The red tint in his eyes vanished. The oppressive aura disappeared as if it had never been there. He looked at his hand. Then at the stunned faces of the peerage. Enough, he said, his voice a low growl. The spar was over. The group returned to the clubhouse in a stunned, heavy silence. Kiba kept staring at Naruto. A mixture of awe and fear on his face. Akeno was watching him with a new, hungry intensity. Kaneko, for the first time, was not eating sweets. She was just watching him. The dynamic hadn't just shifted. It had been shattered and completely reforged. Rias sat behind her desk, her fingers steepled, her mind racing. This was beyond anything she could have imagined. She had wanted a powerful pawn. She had instead acquired a force of nature wearing a human face. He wasn't a piece to be commanded. He was a player in his own right. Akeno, Rias said, breaking the silence. Report. Akeno's gaze flickered from Naruto to Rias. There have been more reports of that stray devil in the city. The one we discussed last week. He's been feeding messily. The energy signature is bizarre. It's chaotic, tainted with something I've never felt before. It feels wrong. Naruto, who had been staring out the window, turned. Wrong how? Akeno looked at him, surprised he would interject. It's hard to describe. Demonic energy is emotional. It can be prideful, lustful, angry. This is just empty. A ravenous, mindless hunger. But the power level is growing at an alarming rate. He filed the information away. A mindless, rapidly growing power. It sounded familiar. It sounded like an unstable power source, something artificial or corrupted. Another piece of the puzzle of this new world. Rias stood, asserting her authority. We will deal with it. For now, Issei, you need to rest and integrate your new demonic power. We'll begin your formal training tomorrow. He gave her a simple nod, then turned to leave. He didn't ask for permission. He simply decided he was done for the night. As he reached the door, he paused. Grimoire, he said, not turning around. I am not your pawn. I am not your servant. I am your ally, a temporary one. We have a mutual interest in surviving the dangers of this world. Treat me as an equal, and I will treat you as one. Try to command me like a dog, and you will find I have teeth. He walked out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Later that night, sitting cross-legged on his bed in the silent house, Naruto closed his eyes. He ignored the faint hum of demonic energy and reached inward, toward the familiar, vast ocean of power that had been his companion for most of his life. He pushed against the Great Seal with his will, not with force, but with a quiet call. A call to an old friend. Deep within the recesses of his soul, behind a cosmic barrier, a colossal eye, slitted and red, snapped open. A rumbling, ancient consciousness stirred from a long, dormant sleep. The voice that echoed in his mind was not just a sound, but a force of nature, a grumpy tremor that he hadn't heard in what felt like an eternity. Took you long enough, you idiot. A faint, genuine smile graced Naruto's lips for the first time in this new world. He wasn't alone. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Whispers of the Fox and the Price of Power. The Min-D-scape was exactly as he remembered it. A vast, echoing chamber, the floor submerged in a thin layer of water that reflected an endless, gray sky. And there, behind the towering bars of a familiar cage, lay the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Kurama was immense, a mountain of orange fur and simmering power, his 9 tails twitching with irritation in his slumber. But as Naruto's consciousness solidified, one colossal, slitted eye snapped open. Burning with ancient intelligence and a familiar, grumpy affection. Took you long enough, you idiot. Kurama's voice thundered through the mental space, a force of nature that Naruto had dearly missed. A genuine smile, the first since his arrival, touched Naruto's lips. It's good to see you too, you old furball. I was worried I was alone in this mess. Kurama snorted, a gust of wind that rippled across the water. Alone, you wish. I'm shackled to your soul, remember. When you were pulled from the Pure Lands, I came with you. A package deal, unfortunately. He shifted his massive head, his gaze turning serious. This isn't a genjutsu, Naruto. And we're not in the elemental nations anymore. I figured that much, Naruto replied, his smile fading as he waded closer to the cage. What is this place? And what is this seal? It feels different. It's not a jutsu. It feels like the universe itself is holding my chakra back. Because it is, Kurama confirmed. Think of it like this. Our chakra is water from our home. This world is filled with oil. You can't just mix them. The fundamental laws of reality here are different. There's no Shinju, no network of spiritual energy for us to tap into. We are incompatible. The fox's eye narrowed. The seal you feel is our own existence fighting against this world's nature. If you were to force your full power out, the resulting paradox would tear this weak vessel apart. It might even unravel our souls. Naruto's blood ran cold. Annihilation. A fate worse than death. So, we're powerless. Don't be a fool, Kurama growled. We are never powerless. We are merely handicapped. That red energy you used. That was my raw Yuki. My unfiltered essence. It's so potent, so alien to this dimension, that it can temporarily override the local laws of physics. But it's poison to this body. Use too much, and it will burn you out from the inside. It's a weapon of last resort, not a tool. Then what do we do? Naruto asked, his mind. The mind of a Hokage, already searching for a solution. There was always a way. We adapt, Kurama said, a cunning glint in his eye. We learn the new rules. This demonic energy the Grimoire girl gave you, it's a crude form of power, based on emotion and imagination. But it's a native energy. It's the oil of this world. Your new body can process it. I can analyze it from here. We can learn to convert our chakra, slowly, carefully, into this new energy. It will be like learning to walk all over again. But you will walk, and eventually, you will run. A plan. It was a long shot, a painstaking process. But it was a plan. Hope, fierce and familiar, ignited in Naruto's chest. So you'll be my internal sensei. A big, grumpy energy converter. Just don't get us killed before I figure it out, brat. Kurama grumbled, laying his head back down, though his eye remained open, watching his partner. And try not to get too friendly with these devils. They reek of lies and ambition. They see you as a tool. Remember that. The connection faded, and Naruto opened his eyes to the familiar ceiling of Issei Hyodo's bedroom. He was not a prisoner. He was a shinobi in a foreign land. And he had a mission. Survive, adapt, and understand. The next day at Kuo Academy was an exercise in silent observation. The boy known as Issei Hyodo no longer walked with a lecherous slouch. He moved with a quiet purpose. His gaze sweeping over his surroundings, cataloging everything. His usual partners in crime, Matsuda and Motohama, tried to engage him in a conversation about the kendo team's new uniforms. But he shut them down with a single, level look that held no malice, only a profound disinterest that was more effective than any rebuke. Whispers followed him down the hall. The school's most infamous pervert had somehow, overnight, developed an aura of dangerous competence. From a window in the old schoolhouse, Rias and Akino watched him cross the courtyard. He's different, Akino observed, a thoughtful, almost hungry smile playing on her lips. The way he carries himself, it's like a sheathed sword. All that terrifying power hidden beneath a calm surface. He is an anomaly, Rias said. Her expression serious. He is not our pawn. Not truly. He is a king who, for now, wears our colors. We need to understand the source of that power. We need to know what he is. That evening, a crimson magic circle glowed in Naruto's room, summoning him. He arrived in the clubroom to find the entire peerage assembled. The atmosphere was different from the day before. The shock had worn off, replaced by a tense, professional curiosity. Your first official job as a devil, Rias announced, sliding a flyer across her desk. It was a simple request, printed on cheap paper. A young man was offering a reward for information about his friend, who had vanished a few days prior in the abandoned warehouse district on the edge of town. The client is a former student, Akino elaborated, her tone all business. He made a pact a few months ago for help with his exams. He called in the favor last night. The area his friend went missing from, it's the same place we've been tracking the stray devil. A hunt and a rescue, Naruto stated, picking up the flyer. His eyes scanned the details, absorbing the information instantly. Exactly, Rias confirmed. Kaneko will go with you. Her senses are the best suited for tracking. Your role will be combat support and tactical assessment. It was a test, and everyone in the room knew it. She was pairing her strongest piece with her most volatile one. Naruto simply nodded. Understood. He and Kaneko teleported to the edge of the warehouse district. The air was heavy with the stench of decay and stagnant water. Rows of skeletal, metal buildings loomed against the twilight sky like forgotten giants. I can smell him, Kaneko said, her voice a soft monotone. The stray. And blood. Old blood. She started off at a brisk, silent pace, navigating the labyrinth of rusted containers and crumbling brickwork with an unnatural grace. Naruto followed a step behind her, his senses on high alert. This was familiar territory. He had spent his youth training in environments just like this one. He moved silently, his footsteps making no sound on the gravel-strewn ground. While Kaneko was tracking the stray's energy and scent, he was tracking everything else. He noticed a patch of disturbed dust near a doorway, indicating recent passage. He saw the faint scratches on a metal wall, the kind made by something being dragged. He felt the unnatural silence of the area, the distinct lack of birds or stray animals. The place felt like a predator's den. You're good at this, Kaneko stated, glancing back at him. It was the most she had said to him all at once. You're quiet. Years of practice, he replied simply. He looked at her, his gaze analytical. The energy you use, it feels clean. Connected to the natural world. Like the sages of my homeland. Kaneko stopped dead in her tracks. She turned to face him fully, her usual stoic expression replaced by one of open shock. No one had ever described her senjutsu like that. Ost Devils just saw it as a source of raw physical power. How did you? A gift, Naruto said, offering a small, non-committal smile. Recognize as a gift. For the first time, a flicker of something other than indifference appeared in Kaneko's eyes. It was respect. She gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible nod and continued on, a new, more comfortable silence settling between them. They weren't just a rook and a pawn anymore. They were a team. They found the source of the scent in the heart of the largest warehouse. The missing boy was there, or what was left of him. He was pinned to the far wall, his body desiccated and hollowed out, a gruesome husk. In the center of the cavernous room stood the stray devil. It was a grotesque mockery of a man. Its body was a lurching, asymmetrical mass of pulsing flesh and twisted limbs. Patches of its skin were slick and black, while others were covered in weeping sores from which a foul-smelling energy leaked like smoke. It had too many joints, its head was tilted at an impossible angle, a single, terrified eye rolling wildly in its socket. The air around it vibrated with a palpable aura of mindless, insatiable hunger. So that's the wrong energy Akeno felt, Naruto murmured. His face grim. It was a cancer, a power that was consuming its host. The creature's head snapped in their direction, a wet, choking sound gurgling from what might have been its throat. It moved with a horrifying, lurching speed, one of its arms elongating into a sharpened spear of bone and charging straight for Kaneko. Kaneko stood her ground, her small frame radiating an immense power. She cocked her fist back and met the charge head-on. The sound of her punch connecting was like a thunderclap. The bone spear shattered, and the stray was sent tumbling back, its body crashing through a stack of wooden pallets. It's strong, but clumsy, Kaneko noted, shaking her hand. It's not fighting to win. It's fighting to eat, Naruto corrected her, his eyes narrowed. It's desperate. Don't let it touch you. That energy is corrosive. The battle was joined. Kaneko was the hammer, her senjutsu-fueled strikes landing with enough force to dent the concrete floor. She was a whirlwind of destruction, moving with a speed and ferocity that belied her size. The stray was resilient, its body regenerating from her blows almost instantly, its flesh bubbling and reforming. Naruto was the scalpel. He flowed around the battle, never staying in one place. He herded the stray, using the environment to his advantage, forcing it into Kaneko's path. When a glob of the stray's corrosive energy spat towards her blind spot, he was there, shoving her out of the way an instant before it struck the ground, eating a sizzling hole in the concrete. When the stray tried to flee, he appeared in its path. A perfectly aimed kick to a knee joint sending it stumbling back into the fray. He wasn't landing devastating blows, but every move he made was precise, efficient, and tactically perfect. He and Kaneko moved in a seamless, unspoken rhythm, a perfect fusion of overwhelming power and flawless strategy. Finally, seeing an opening, Kaneko landed a devastating uppercut that sent the creature flying into the air. Now, she yelled. Naruto was already moving. He leapt onto a stack of crates, then springboarded high into the air, intercepting the falling monster. He couldn't use a Rasengan, but he could mimic the principle. He focused a sliver of his new demonic energy into his palm. Not much, just a spinning vortex of crimson power. He slammed his palm into the center of the stray's chest. Spiral Fist, he yelled, the name coming to him in the moment. The demonic energy discharged on impact, not with the grinding power of a Rasengan, but with a concussive blast that ripped through the stray's unstable body. The creature screamed, a sound that was suddenly, shockingly human. Its monstrous form began to dissolve, melting away like wax. For a brief, heart-wrenching moment, the face of a normal man was visible within the dissolving mass, his eyes filled with terror and a desperate plea for release. Then, he was gone, turning to dust that scattered on the warehouse floor. The victory was hollow. It hadn't been an execution. It had been euthanasia. They returned to the clubroom, the client's contract fulfilled, though the news they carried was grim. Naruto delivered the report, his voice calm and even. He detailed the stray's abilities, its weaknesses, its unstable nature, and the tactical breakdown of the fight. He gave Kaneko full credit for her power, framing his own role as simple support. Rias and the others listened in silence, their expressions a mixture of grim satisfaction and renewed awe. He hadn't just fought, he had analyzed, strategized, and survived. He had proven himself to be more than just a source of raw power. He was a weapon, and he was intelligent enough to aim himself. As the meeting concluded and Naruto prepared to leave, his eyes drifted to the window. Standing uncertainly near the entrance to the school grounds, bathed in the gentle glow of a street lamp, was a young nun with blonde hair and kind, green eyes. She clutched a suitcase to her chest and looked lost, a beacon of gentle light in the encroaching darkness. Even from this distance, Naruto could feel it. A warmth, a purity that was the complete antithesis of the demonic energy that now flowed through his veins. It was holy power, and it was radiating from her like a small sun. His shinobi senses, honed to detect any potential threat or anomaly, screamed at him. This girl, who looked so harmless, was a profound and dangerous complication. And she was walking straight into a den of devils. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The kindness of a stranger, the eyes of a shinobi. He walked away from the old school building, the grim satisfaction of the mission fading into the cool night air. The report was done, the stray dispatched. It was a clean, if brutal, piece of business. But as he passed through the school gates, he felt it again, a gentle warmth that was as out of place here as a sunbeam in a tomb. There, under the lonely orange glow of a street lamp, stood the blonde nun. Asia Argento. She clutched her suitcase like a shield, her wide, green eyes scanning the darkened school grounds with a look of profound, heart-wrenching loneliness. She was a lost lamb that had wandered into a forest of wolves, and her light was a beacon to every predator in the shadows. The old issei would have seen a cute girl in a nun's habit and his mind would have filled with lewd, idiotic fantasies. Naruto saw a tactical situation. The girl radiated holy power, a tangible aura of warmth and purity that was a physical irritant to his newly acquired demonic nature. It felt like standing too close to a fire. She was a walking, talking weakness for any devil in the vicinity. His mind, the mind of a cage, raced through the possibilities. She was a trap, an exorcee. Saint sent by the church to scout or bait the local devils. Unlikely. Her posture, her expression, her very aura screamed innocence and fear, not deception. There was no guile in her. She was a target. Her power was significant. Someone might want it. Plausible, given what he knew of this world's power dynamics. She was simply lost. The most dangerous possibility of all. An innocent with that much power was a liability to everyone, including herself. He couldn't just walk away. A variable this significant, left unchecked on the battlefield, was a recipe for disaster. He altered his path, his footsteps silent on the pavement, approaching her not as a predator, but as a shadow. "Are you lost?" His voice was quiet, calm. Not the boisterous tone of Issei Hyodo, but the measured cadence of A man used to taking command of a situation. Asia jumped, startled, her suitcase clattering against her legs. She spun around, her eyes wide with fear. I'm so sorry, she stammered, her Japanese accented. I am looking for the church. He looked at her, his gaze taking in everything. The worn-out shoes, the faded travel bag, the genuine fear in her eyes. This was no act. She was alone and terrified. A familiar ache resonated deep within him. The memory of a small, blonde boy sitting on a swing, shunned and alone. He softened his expression, letting a fraction of genuine warmth show. There's no church near the school, he said, his voice gentle. The main one is on the other side of town. It's a long walk from here. Oh, she said, her shoulders slumping. The last bit of hope seemed to drain from her face. I see. Thank you. She looked down at her feet, a portrait of utter dejection. He was supposed to be gathering intelligence, to be wary of this beacon of holy power. But what he saw was just a kid who had been thrown into a world she didn't understand. His duty as a shinobi and his instincts as Naruto Uzumaki were, for once, in perfect alignment. Protect the innocent. It's late, he said, making a decision, and this area isn't the safest after dark. I can walk you to the station. You can get a train from there that will take you closer. Her head snapped up, her eyes shining with surprise and a desperate, fragile gratitude. Really, you would do that? But I am a stranger. You're a stranger who looks like she could use some help, he replied with a simple shrug. My name is Issei Hyodo. I am Asia Argento, she said, a small, beautiful smile finally gracing her lips. Thank you, Hyodo-san. He simply nodded and started walking, deliberately choosing a well-lit public route. She hurried to catch up, walking beside him, the awkward silence hanging between them. He didn't push for information. He let her be. He knew that a person in her state was like a cornered animal. Pressing them would only make them bolt. Kindness and patience were the keys. You are very kind, she said eventually, her voice barely a whisper. I have not met many kind people since I arrived in Japan. This world can be a hard place if you're alone, he found himself saying, the words coming from a place deeper than Issei's memories. Sometimes, kindness is all people have to offer. His words seemed to resonate with her. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not the pervert his reputation suggested, but a boy with old eyes, that held a quiet understanding of her own loneliness. A bond, fragile but real, began to form. He left her at the brightly lit train station, giving her clear directions and enough money for a ticket, waving off her protests. He watched until she was safely on the platform before turning away and melting back into the shadows. He didn't go home. He went straight back to the clubroom. He materialized in the crimson teleportation circle to the stunned faces of Rias and Akino, who were in the middle of a late-night strategy session. Issei-kun, Rias asked, surprised. Is something wrong? There's a nun named Asia Argento in town, he stated, getting straight to the point. He relayed the entire encounter, his tone that of a field agent delivering a crucial report. She radiates a powerful holy aura. She says she's looking for the local church, but she was sent here from abroad. She's alone, naive, and has no idea what kind of territory she's walked into. Conclusion. She's not an immediate threat, but she's a high-value target. And she's going to be a problem. Rias and Akino exchanged a look. We are aware of her, Rias admitted, her expression turning grim. The church informed us, as a professional courtesy, that they were excommunicating a sister and sending her to the territory of the local fallen angels. They washed their hands of her. We believe the fallen are planning to use her for something. Specifically, for her sacred gear. Sacred gear. The term was new. Relics. Artifacts of immense power bestowed upon certain humans by the God of the Bible, Akino explained. Asia Argento possesses one of the most powerful healing-type gears in existence, Twilight Healing. It's said to be able to heal any injury, even those inflicted upon devils and fallen angels. It all clicked into place. Rainer, the fallen angel who had tried to kill him, was playing a larger game. And Asia was the prize. So you were just going to let the fallen angels take her? He asked, his voice dangerously level. It's a delicate political situation, Rias said, her tone defensive. Making a move on someone under the Fallen's protection could be seen as an act of aggression. We were gathering intelligence before deciding on a course of action. Your intelligence gathering is going to get her killed, Naruto shot back, his eyes flashing with an inner fire that made Rias flinch. She's a child, she's not a chess piece. I understand your concern, Issei, Rias said, regaining her composure, though his sudden intensity had clearly rattled her. Which is why I have a new mission for you. You've already established a connection with her. Get closer. Become her friend. Find out what Rainer and her cadre are planning. Be my eyes and ears. Can you do that? It was a shrewd move. She was using his own compassion as a tool. Kurama's cynical voice echoed in his mind. See, a tool. I told you, brat. She wants you to use the girl's trust as a weapon. He knew it, but Rias was also giving him exactly what he wanted, a license to get involved. Fine, he said, I'll be your eyes and ears. But if I determine she is in immediate danger, I'm pulling her out. With or without your permission. Before Rias could argue, he turned and vanished into the teleportation circle, leaving a tense silence behind him. The next day, he ran into Asia near a park downtown. She was sitting on a bench, looking just as lost as the night before. Her face lit up with a genuine, relieved smile when she saw him. Hyodo-san, it is good to see you again. Just Issei is fine, he said, sitting down next to her. Leaving a respectful distance. Did you find the church? Her smile faltered. Yes, but they did not have a place for me. They said I am no longer welcome. The words were a fresh wound, and her voice trembled. The people who brought me to this town, they have given me a place to stay. They are very kind. These people, he said, his voice casual, do they have black wings? Asia's eyes went wide with shock. How did you know? A lucky guess, he lied smoothly. I saw one of them flying the other night. I didn't know what it was. He spent the next hour with her, simply talking. He listened as she spoke of her life, of her power to heal, and of how that very power had led to her being cast out by the church she loved. She had healed a devil, an act of compassion that was deemed the highest heresy. He listened to her pain, her confusion, and her unwavering belief in the good of others, even those who had hurt her. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just listened, and in her story of being condemned for a power she never asked for, he saw the reflection of his own life as a Jinchuriki. He understood her loneliness on a level no one else in this world possibly could. As they were talking, a man in a trench coat approached them. He had a smug, cruel face that Naruto instantly disliked. It was Danesik, one of Rainer's subordinates. Asia, the fallen angel said, his voice a condescending drawl. Rainer-sama is looking for you. Who is your little friend? His eyes raked over Naruto, dismissing him as insignificant. This is Issei-san, Asia said nervously. He helped me last night. Is that so? Danesik sneered. He leaned in close to Asia, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper that Naruto's enhanced senses picked up easily. You were told not to associate with locals. Are you being disobedient? You know what happens when you disappoint Rainer-sama. He saw the flicker of terror in Asia's eyes, the way she shrank back from the man. He saw the subtle way Danesik's hand rested near a bulge under his coat. It was the casual cruelty of a bully, the possessiveness of a slaver. And in that moment, the mission no longer mattered. Rias's orders, the political complexities, the need for subtlety, it all burned away, replaced by a single, cold, hard certainty. This was not a game of chess. It was a rescue mission. And it started now. Naruto stood up, placing himself between Danesik and Asia. He didn't summon any power. He didn't raise his voice. He just met the fallen angel's gaze, and his blue eyes were as cold and deep as the winter sea. She's with me, he said. His voice quiet, yet carrying an absolute finality that cut through the air. We were just leaving. Danesik was taken aback by the sudden, defiant shift in the boy's demeanor. He saw not a weak human high schooler, but an immovable object. He felt a primal instinct, the one that tells a predator when it has stumbled across something far higher up the food chain, and it screamed at him to back down. He scoffed, trying to save face. Whatever, just have her back by sunset, or there will be trouble. He turned and stalked away, casting one last hateful glare over his shoulder. Asia was trembling, looking at Naruto with wide, frightened eyes. I am sorry, she whispered. You should not have done that. They are dangerous. So am I, Naruto replied, his voice softening as he looked at her. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe. He was done gathering intelligence. He had all the information he needed. The fallen angels were holding an innocent girl captive, planning to use her for her power. Reaincarnated was willing to risk the girl's life for political advantage. The church had abandoned her. It seemed that in this world, just like his old one, if you wanted something done right, if you wanted to protect someone, you had to do it yourself. He looked up at the sky, his decision made. He was no longer a pawn. He was no longer an observer. He was a player, and he was about to flip the entire board over. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. Drawing a line. The concept of a safe house was second nature to him. His own home was a target. The occult research club was Rias's territory. Both were predictable. Both were traps. He led Asia away from the park, not towards the familiar residential streets, but into the bustling, anonymous heart of the city. He moved with a quiet purpose, his senses on high alert, weaving through the evening crowds like a fish through water. Asia followed, her fear slowly being replaced by a fragile, questioning trust. He hadn't explained anything, but the calm certainty in his actions was more reassuring than any empty promise. He stopped in front of a small, nondescript business hotel, the kind used by traveling salesmen and people who didn't want to be found. He paid for a single room for 2 nights in cash, using the last of Issei's emergency money without a second thought. The room was small, clean, and utterly impersonal. It was perfect. He closed the door and drew the curtains, plunging the room into the dim, artificial light of a single bedside lamp. He turned to Asia, who stood uncertainly by the door, clutching her suitcase as if it were her only friend. Sit down, Asia, he said, his voice gentle but firm. He gestured to one of the 2 simple beds. We need to talk. She did as he asked, perching on the edge of the mattress. He pulled the room's only chair to face her, creating a space of focused intimacy. The people you are staying with, he began, his eyes meeting hers. The ones with the black wings. They are not your friends. They are not kind. They are using you. Asia flinched, her hands tightening on her suitcase. No, she whispered, shaking her head. Rainer-san. She gave me a home when my church threw me away. She gave you a cage, Naruto corrected her, his voice devoid of malice, stating it as a simple, undeniable fact. She wants the power inside you. Your twilight healing, and once she has it, she will kill you. The bluntness of his words struck her like a physical blow. Tears welled in her eyes. How can you know that? You are just a human. It was a fair question. He took a calculated risk. I am not a normal human, Asia. The night we met, just before you arrived, I was attacked and killed by one of Rainer's followers. I was brought back to life by the devils of the Gremory clan. The red-haired girl from school and her friends. Her gasp was sharp, a sound of horrified understanding. Devils, you are one of them. Her hand instinctively went to the small cross around her neck, her ingrained faith warring with the kindness the boy in front of her had shown. I am something else, he said, the words feeling truer than any other description. But yes, I now carry their energy. That is how I know what they are. It's how I know what Rainer is. And it's how I know they are all playing a game with your life as the prize. He let the information sink in, giving her space to process the impossible truth. He saw the conflict on her face, the terror, the confusion. He needed her to make a choice. I am not asking you to trust me because I am a good person, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I am asking you to trust me because I am the only one telling you the truth. Rainer wants to use you. The Gremory devils want to use you as a bargaining chip. I just want you to live. The choice is yours. You can walk out that door and go back to Rainer, or you can stay here, with me, and we will figure this out together. He leaned back, his part said. He had laid the cards on the table. Forcing her would make him no better than the others. She had to choose freedom. Asia looked at him, her tear-filled eyes searching his face. She saw no deception, no ambition, only a profound, weary sincerity. She saw the boy who had walked her to the station, who had given her money, who had stood up to a monster for her. She saw a fellow outcast. Her trembling slowly subsided, replaced by a nascent resolve. I believe you, she whispered, the words barely audible. I will stay. Relief, potent and immediate, washed over him. He gave her a small, reassuring nod. Get some rest. I will watch over you. Just as a semblance of peace settled over the room, the air grew thick and heavy. The space warped, and a crimson magic circle blazed into existence on the cheap carpet. From it emerged Rias Grimori, her face a mask of cold fury. She was flanked by Akino, whose smile was gone, replaced by a look of dangerous interest, and Kiba, whose hand rested anxiously on his sword hilt. Kaneko was there too, standing slightly behind the others, her expression as blank as ever. Issei, Rias's voice was dangerously low, each word laced with ice. What is the meaning of this? You have defied a direct order. You have abducted an asset and placed my entire peerage at risk. Hand her over, now. Asia gasped and scrambled behind Naruto, our newfound trust solidifying into a desperate reliance. Naruto didn't even turn to look at her. He slowly rose from his chair, his body a living shield between the terrified nun and the enraged devil heiress. She is not an asset, Naruto said, his voice just as quiet, but carrying the weight of a mountain. She is a person, and I am not handing her over. You are my pawn. Rias snapped, her crimson aura flaring around her, making the small room feel like a furnace. You will do as I command. This is not a game. Your reckless actions could provoke a war with the fallen angels. This was never a game, Naruto countered. Taking a step forward, his own energy, the sliver of demonic power he possessed, felt insignificant next to Rias's, but he stood his ground, an immovable rock against a raging tide. You talk about the risk of war, while Rainer is sharpening the knife she's going to use to carve that girl's power out of her chest. Your caution is just a pretty word for cowardice. You were willing to let an innocent die to avoid a political inconvenience. The accusation hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Kiba flinched. Akino's eyes widened slightly. Rias's fury was momentarily replaced by shock. No one had ever spoken to her like that. I am doing what you should have done from the beginning, Naruto continued, pressing his advantage. I am protecting the innocent. I am doing the job of a leader, not a politician. Something you don't seem to understand. You know nothing of leadership. Rias retorted, stung by the accusation. You are a perverted fool who just stumbled into this world. I have responsibilities you can't even fathom. My old life was nothing but responsibility, Naruto said, and for a fleeting moment, the mask of Issei Hyodo slipped, and they saw him for what he was, a man who had borne the weight of an entire world on his shoulders. His voice was filled with a weariness that was ancient. I've led armies. I've fought in wars that would ache your squabbles look like a schoolyard shoving match. And I learned the most important lesson a leader ever can. You never, ever sacrifice your own people. And you never turn your back on someone who needs your help. His gaze swept over her peerage. He looked at Kiba. You call yourself a knight. Is it a knight's duty to stand by while an innocent is threatened? Kiba looked away, his jaw tight with shame. He looked at Kaneko. You have the energy of the natural world in you. Does nature not protect its own? Kaneko gave the smallest of nods, her loyalty visibly shifting. Enough, Rias commanded, though her voice had lost its conviction. She was losing control of her own peerage, right here in this tiny hotel room. Naruto took one final step forward, standing less than a foot from her. He was shorter, weaker, a mere pawn in her set, but in that moment, he commanded the room utterly. Here is what is going to happen, he said, his voice dropping to an authoritative whisper that was for her alone. Asia stays with me. If Rainer and her flock of overgrown pigeons want her, they have to go through me. You and your family can stand with me and do the right thing for once in your privileged lives. Or you can stand aside and watch. But I am not handing her over. I am not asking for your permission. I am telling you how it is going to be. It was a declaration of independence. A coup staged not with power, but with sheer, unshakable will. Rias stared at him, her crimson eyes wide with a mixture of fury, disbelief, and a grudging, infuriating flicker of respect. She saw the unwavering resolve in his eyes. She saw the silent dissent among her own pieces. To force the issue here would be to shatter her peerage. She had lost. She straightened up, gathering the tattered remnants of her authority. Fine, she hissed, the word tasting like poison. You are on your own. When the fallen come for you, we will not save you. The consequences of this are on your head. She turned, her body rigid with anger, and vanished into a new magic circle, Kiba and a visibly amused Akano following her. Kaneko hesitated for a fraction of a second. She looked at Naruto, then at Asia, and gave a single firm nod of support before she too disappeared. The room was suddenly quiet again. The oppressive demonic pressure was gone. Naruto let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He had won the battle. But the war was just about to begin. He had protected Asia from her supposed allies, but in doing so, he had painted a massive target on both of their backs. As if on cue, he felt it. A cold, predatory chill slithering through the city's energy fields. Multiple signatures, all tainted with the familiar scent of ozone and arrogance. They weren't scouting. They were hunting. They were converging on this hotel with alarming speed. Rainer, enraged that her prize had been stolen from under her nose, had abandoned all pretense of subtlety. She was coming to collect. He turned to Asia, who was looking at him with awe. He gave her a confident, reassuring smile. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone. He walked to the window and peered through a crack in the curtains. Down on the street below, 3 figures materialized from the shadows, their cruel eyes scanning the hotel's facade. Danasik, the sadistic, blue-haired fallen named Kalawarner. And a third, a hulking brute named Mittelt. They were here. The enemy was at the door. And he was standing alone. A fierce, familiar grin spread across his face. Alone was how he'd started his first life. It seemed fitting he'd start this one the same way. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. Fox in the Henhouse. He closed the hotel room door behind him, the soft click of the lock echoing the finality of his decision. He gave Asia one last look, a silent promise that was more potent than any words. Then he turned, his entire demeanor shifting. The gentle protector vanished, replaced by the hardened shinobi. His senses, a scion of his natural instincts and the new demonic energy humming beneath his skin, stretched out into the night. 3 of them, downstairs, waiting. He didn't take the elevator. He took the emergency stairs. His footsteps silent on the concrete. He emerged into the ground floor maintenance corridor, a ghost in the building's guts, and slipped out a side exit into the narrow alley that ran alongside the hotel. He was a shadow moving through shadows, a tactic as familiar to him as breathing. He circled around to the front, positioning himself in the mouth of the alley, cloaked in darkness, watching the 3 fallen angels who had gathered under the sterile white light of the hotel's entrance. Danasik stood in the center, his face a mask of arrogant impatience. To his left was the buxom, blue-haired Kalawarner, her expression bored and cruel. To his right, the petite but powerfully built Mittelt was cracking her knuckles, a giddy, sadistic smile on her face. Are we just going to stand here? Mittelt whined. Let's just go up and blast the little traitor and her human pet to pieces. Rainer-sama wants the sacred gear intact, you idiot, Danasik snapped. We go in, we retrieve the girl. If the boy gets in the way, you can have what's left of him. He's just one fledgling devil, Kalawarner added with a dismissive wave of her hand. This is hardly a challenge. Then you won't mind that I'm here to make it one. Naruto's voice cut through the night, calm and clear. He stepped out of the alley's darkness and into the light, his hands casually tucked into his pockets. He looked like what he was, a high school kid in a school uniform. He looked utterly, laughably out of his depth. The 3 fallen angels turned, their expressions shifting from surprise to amusement. Well, Danasik sneered, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. The pet comes when called. You've saved us the trouble of kicking down your door. You think you can stop the 3 of us? I'm not going to stop you, Naruto said, his gaze level and cold. I'm going to send you home with a message. Mittelt laughed, a high-pitched, grating sound. This is going to be fun. She lunged, her small L-frame exploding with a disproportionate amount of speed and power. Her fist, wreathed in a faint golden light, aimed to cave his chest in. It was a crude, straightforward attack, relying entirely on overwhelming force. It was also incredibly slow. To Naruto, who had fought opponents who could bend space and time. Her charge was a clumsy, telegraphed crawl. He didn't move back. He didn't summon a shield of demonic energy. He simply shifted his weight onto his back foot as her fist arrived, letting the blow skim past his ribs by less than an inch. As her momentum carried her forward, he brought his right hand out of his pocket. It wasn't a punch. His fingers were extended, rigid. He jabbed forward, striking the nerve cluster just below her attacking arm's shoulder. Mittelt gasped, a short, sharp sound of pain and shock. Her entire arm went numb, the golden light sputtering out. Her charge faltered. Before she could recover, Naruto's left foot swept out, hooking behind her ankle and pulling. She tumbled backward, landing on the pavement with a heavy, undignified thud. The entire exchange had taken less than 2 seconds. Kalawarner's and Danesik's amusement evaporated, replaced by stunned disbelief. How? Danesik stammered. She telegraphs her movements, Naruto stated simply, his eyes already shifting to Kalawarner. She puts all her weight into her right leg just before she attacks. It's amateurish. His cold, tactical breakdown was more unnerving than any boast. Enraged, Kalawarner thrust her hands forward, creating a dozen spears of pure, searing light that hung in the air, all aimed at him. Let's see you analyze this, you little worm. She flung them forward. The air screamed as the holy projectiles tore through it. Naruto moved. He flowed backward into the alley. The light spears slamming into the brick wall where he'd been standing, exploding in showers of superheated debris. He used the cloud of dust and smoke as cover, his form vanishing from sight. He's hiding, Danesik yelled, forming a light spear of his own. Flush him out. A single, perfectly aimed rock shot out of the dust cloud and struck Kalawarner's hand. It wasn't powerful enough to injure her, but the surprise made her yelp and drop her concentration. The light spear she was forming fizzled out. Before she could recover, he was on her. He burst from the smoke, not from the front, but from the side. Having scaled the wall and used a fire escape to flank them in an instant. His movements were a blur of shinobi efficiency. He slapped her outstretched hands aside, neutralizing her as a ranged threat, and drove the heel of his palm into her solar plexus. The air rushed from her lungs in a pained whoosh, and she crumpled to her knees, gasping. Danesik stared in horror. This wasn't happening. A single, fledgling devil was dismantling 3 veteran fallen angels. It was impossible. His survival instincts screamed at him. He abandoned any thought of capturing Asia and hurled his own light spear, aiming to kill. This, Naruto couldn't just dodge. The alley was too narrow. He met it head on. He didn't try to block it with demonic energy. He didn't have enough. Instead, he reached inside, to the cracked seal in his soul, and pulled. Not a flood, just a trickle. A single, controlled thread of Kurama's raw, malevolent Yuki. Finally, the fox grumbled in his mind. A faint, blood-red aura, so thin it was almost invisible, flickered around his body. His blue eyes flashed crimson for a heartbeat. The oppressive weight of his presence fell upon Danesik like a physical blow, making the fallen angel's soul tremble. Naruto's hand, now coated in that shimmering red energy, shot out and caught the light spear by its tip. The effect was immediate and violent. Holy energy and demonic Yuki were anathema to each other. The spear didn't just stop, it violently destabilized. With a sound like cracking thunder, it disintegrated in his hand, the conflicting energies annihilate, aiding each other in a blast of purple light and searing heat that threw him back a few feet, his sleeve smoldering. Danesik's jaw hung open. He had just witnessed the impossible. Someone had caught a light spear. Naruto landed on his feet, shaking his tingling hand. The red aura vanished as quickly as it had appeared. He looked at the terrified fallen angel, his eyes cold and hard. Is that all you have? Panic shattered Danesik's composure. He turned to run. He didn't get 2 steps. Naruto was suddenly there, a phantom that had crossed the 10-foot distance in the blink of an eye. He grabbed Danesik's arm, twisting it behind his back with a sickening crack of bone. The fallen angel screamed. Naruto leaned in close, his voice a low, menacing whisper in Danesik's ear. Here is the message. You go back to your master. Rainer. You tell her that Ossia Argento is under my protection now. This city, this hotel, this is my territory. If any of you show your faces here again, if you so much as look in her direction, I will hunt you down, one by one, and I will clip your wings permanently. He shoved the whimpering, broken fallen angel forward. Danasik stumbled, cradling his shattered arm, his eyes wide with pure terror. He looked at the unconscious Mittelt, the gasping Kalawarner, and the monster standing calmly in the alleyway. He scrambled to his feet and vanished into the night, teleporting away in a desperate flash of black feathers. Kalawarner, seeing her chance, did the same, leaving her fallen comrade behind without a second thought. Naruto stood over the unconscious form of Mittelt for a moment, then simply turned and walked back into the hotel, leaving her lying in the alley. She was not a threat. Upstairs, in the occult research club, the magical projection screen flickered and died. The room was utterly silent. Kiba was staring at the blank screen, his knuckles white where he gripped the back of a sofa. That was not the fighting style of a devil. It was the precise, brutally efficient art of a master assassin. The economy of motion, the tactical use of the environment, the psychological dominance, it was on another level entirely. Akeno had a hand pressed to her cheek, a faint blush on her face. Her usual seductive smile was gone, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated fascination. Era, she breathed. He didn't just beat them. He humiliated them. He broke them. Such dominance. Kaneko was munching on a chocolate bar, but for the first time, there was a small, genuine smile on her face. It was a smile of profound respect. Rias Grimori stood frozen behind her desk, her mind reeling. The fury she had felt was gone, washed away by a tidal wave of shock and a cold, creeping dread. She had threatened him. She had abandoned him. She had treated a king like a pawn. And now, that king had single-handedly declared war on a faction of fallen angels and won the opening battle without breaking a sweat. He had drawn a line, not just against Rainer, but against her. He had established his own territory, his own authority, right in the middle of hers. She had not acquired a powerful piece for her game. She had introduced a PLA. Who was about to change all the rules. Naruto walked back into the hotel room. He had a small cut on his cheek from the exploding spear, and his sleeve was blackened, but otherwise, he was fine. Asia was huddled on the bed, her hands clasped in prayer, tears streaming down her face. She looked up as he entered, her eyes wide with fear. Are they? He walked over and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. He gave her a calm, tired, but completely genuine smile. It's all right, he said softly. They're gone. You're safe. For now. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Quiet and the Calling. The violence was over as quickly as it had begun. One moment, the night was filled with the screech of disintegrating light and the crack of bone. The next, there was only the distant hum of city traffic and the quiet drip of water from an overflowing gutter in the alley. Naruto stepped back into the sterile confines of the hotel room, the adrenaline of battle already receding, leaving a familiar, weary calm in its wake. Asia was huddled on the bed, a small, trembling ball of fear. She looked up as he entered, her wide green eyes searching him for injury, for any sign that the monsters from the dark had broken him. She saw the ugly, blackened scorch mark on his forearm where the light spear had exploded, and a soft gasp escaped her lips. You are hurt, she whispered, scrambling off the bed. It's nothing, he said, waving it off. It was less damage than he'd gotten in 1,000 academy spars. But the pain was a dull, persistent throb, a reminder of how fragile this new body was. Please, she insisted, her voice gaining a sliver of its strength back. She reached out, her hands hovering just over his injured arm. Let me help you. It is the only thing I can do. He hesitated. The thought of her holy power, the very antithesis of his new demonic nature, touching him was unsettling. Kurama's grumbling echoed in his mind, a low thrum of discontent. But then he looked at her face, at the desperate need to be useful, to repay the kindness he'd shown her, to do something other than be a victim. Refusing her would be a cruelty in its own right. All right, he relented, TTING on the edge of the bed and holding out his arm. She knelt before him, her hands glowing with a soft, emerald light. The warmth of it was immediate, but it was quickly followed by a sharp, searing pain. It felt like his arm had been plunged into a vat of acid. The holy energy wasn't just healing the burn, it was actively warring with the demonic cells of his reincarnated body. He could feel Two energies tearing at each other on a microscopic level. A sheen of sweat broke out on his forehead, and he clenched his jaw, refusing to make a sound. Asia saw it instantly. She saw the flicker of pain in his eyes. The tightening of the muscles in his neck. "It hurts you," she said, her own voice filled with pain. "My power. It is hurting you. I should stop." "No," he said, his voice a low, steady rumble. "Don't stop. Keep going." Quote. He met her gaze, and in his eyes, she saw not anger or resentment, but an unwavering, resolute endurance. He was accepting this pain for her. He was letting her very nature, the thing that had made her an outcast, wound him just so she could feel like she was helping. The tears she had been holding back began to fall freely, but this time, they weren't for herself. She focused, pouring all her will and compassion into her gift. The emerald light intensified, and the warring energies in his arm found a strange, painful equilibrium. The burn healed, the blackened skin knitting itself back together, leaving behind no trace of a scar. When the light faded, his arm was whole. He flexed his fingers, the pain slowly subsiding into a dull ache. "Thank you, Asia. That's an incredible power you have." "It is a curse," she said sadly, wiping at her eyes. "No," he said, his voice soft but firm. He gently took her hand, the one that had just healed him. "Or is only a curse if you let others tell you it is. Trust me, I know." In that moment, in that small, cheap hotel room, two outcasts, a Jinchuriki turned devil and an excommunicated saint, found a perfect, unspoken understanding. The atmosphere in the occult research club was thick enough to be cut with a knife. The projection screen was dark, but the images of the battle were burned into everyone's minds. Rias stood behind her desk, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. She was not used to being defied. She was certainly not used to being proven so spectacularly wrong. His methods were brutally effective, Kiba said, breaking the silence. His voice was heavy with a respect that bordered on awe. He didn't fight like a devil. He fought like a professional. He neutralized them without wasting a single movement. He was magnificent, Akeno purred, fanning herself lightly. The dangerous glint in her eyes was back, more intense than ever. To stand alone against three fallen and not only win, but utterly dominate them, Rias, the power he possesses is one thing. But his skill, his will, that is something else entirely. We cannot afford to make an enemy of him. Rias's jaw tightened. He is my pawn. He has already made an enemy of his king. No, Kaneko said, her voice quiet but clear, cutting through the tension. Everyone turned to look at her. She was nibbling on a yokon. But her eyes were fixed on Rias with an unblinking seriousness. He said he was your ally. You treated him like a dog. The dog bit back. The blunt, undeniable truth of her words silenced Rias. She had been arrogant. She had underestimated him, seen him as Issei Hyodo, the fool, instead of the terrifyingly competent stranger who wore his face. Her pride had cost her control of the situation. "What do you propose we do?" Rias asked, her voice clipped. It was a genuine question. For the first time, she was asking her peerage for their counsel on this matter, not giving them orders. "We should have helped him," Kiba said immediately. "He was protecting an innocent. That is what what we, are supposed to do. We still can. We should go to him, offer our support. An alliance," Akeno added smoothly, picking up on Kiba's thread. "Not as king and pawn, but as equals. He has proven he can hold his own territory. We should treat him as a neighboring lord, not a rebellious servant. It is the only way he will ever listen to us." Rias hated it. Every part of her noble upbringing screamed against the idea of negotiating with a subordinate. But she was also a pragmatist. Naruto had the tactical advantage. He had the moral high ground. And he had a power she still couldn't comprehend. "Fine," she conceded, the word feeling like broken glass in her mouth. "We will approach him, but we will do it my way. Tomorrow." Naruto sat cross-legged on the floor of the hotel room, a silent sentinel in the darkness while Asia slept fitfully on one of the beds. He closed his eyes, sinking into his mindscape. Kurama was awake, his massive head resting on his paws, his slitted eye watching him approach. "The little nun's holy power," the fox rumbled, his voice echoing in the vast, internal space. "It feels like scrubbing my fur with sandpaper," but it didn't permanently damage the vessel. Interesting. Her power purifies without destroying. A rare trait. She's a good person, Naruto replied simply. She doesn't deserve any of this. Good people get killed every day, brat. Especially in a world full of predators. You've kicked the hornet's nest. Rainer won't take that humiliation lying down. She'll be back, with more than 3 washed-up flunkies. I know, Naruto said. I'm counting on it. A soft, hesitant knock at the hotel room door snapped him back to reality. He was on his feet in an instant. His body positioned in front of Asia's bed, every muscle coiled. The energy signature on the other side of the door was small, familiar. He relaxed slightly, but his guard remained up. He opened the door a crack. Kaneko stood in the hallway, holding a plastic convenience store bag. She looked up at him with her usual flat expression. You have to eat, she said, pushing the bag into his hands. It was filled with onigiri, sandwiches, and several bottles of water. And, at the very bottom, a handful of chocolate bars. He stared at her, surprised. You came alone, she nodded. The president is angry. She will want to talk tomorrow. This is not from her. This is from me. She held out her hand. In her palm was a cheap, disposable burner phone. For contact. Not with them. With me. He took the phone, their fingers brushing. It was a gesture of immense trust. She was defying her king, establishing a secret line of communication. She was choosing a side. Why? He asked, his voice quiet. You did the right thing, she said, as if it were the simplest, most obvious reason in the world. And, you remind me of someone. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. He understood. The loneliness. The burden of a power you didn't ask for. They were the same. She pulled a chocolate bar from her pocket, unwrapped it, and broke it in 2. She offered him a piece. He took it. They stood there for a moment in the sterile hotel hallway, a reincarnated shinobi and a Nekomata devil, sharing a piece of chocolate. It was a pact, a promise, an alliance. He had his first true friend in this new, strange world. Just as he was about to thank her, the burner phone in his hand buzzed to life. A text message. He looked at Kaneko, who just shrugged. He opened it. The number was blocked, but the message was chillingly clear. Abandoned church. North side of town. We have your city's forgotten souls. Come get them. Or don't. Their blood is on your hands. Attached was a grainy photo. A half-dozen terrified, disheveled people, the city's homeless, were huddled together on the floor of a dilapidated church nave, surrounded by the smirking, cruel faces of several fallen angels. It wasn't just Rainer's group. There were more, at least double the number from before. Rainer had adapted. She had learned from his tactical takedown. She couldn't beat him with brute force, so she had changed the game. She wasn't attacking him. She was attacking his conscience. Asia, woken by the buzzing phone, had crept to the door. She saw the picture over his shoulder, and a horrified sob escaped her lips. It is my fault, she cried, her voice breaking. All those people, because of me. I have to go to them. I have to give myself up. She made a move for the door, but Naruto put a firm hand on her shoulder, stopping her. No, that's what they want. It's a trap, Asia. A blatant, obvious trap. But we cannot let them die. She pleaded, her eyes swimming with tears. Naruto looked from her desperate face to the cold, calculating cruelty of the message on the phone. Kurama was right. The hornets were back, and they had brought the whole nest. He knew it was a trap. But he also knew, with an absolute certainty that was etched into the very core of his soul, that he could not leave innocent people to suffer. That wasn't who he was. He was Naruto Uzumaki, and he never turned his back on anyone. A cold, dangerous calm settled over him. The eyes of the 7th Hokage stared out the hotel room window, seeing not the city lights, but a new battlefield laid out before him. They want a confrontation, he said. His voice quiet, but resonating with a power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. They'll get one. He looked down at Kaneko, who hadn't moved, her golden eyes watching him, waiting. A fierce, predatory grin, the likes of which none of them had ever seen on Issei Hyodo's face, spread across his lips. But we're going to do this on my terms. I'm going to need a distraction. The plan was already forming, a brilliant, audacious strategy clicking into place. He wasn't just going to save the hostages. He was going to end this. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The stage and the players. The hotel room, which had briefly been a sanctuary, transformed into a war room. The flickering screen of the burner phone cast a grim, pale light on their faces. Asia's initial panic had subsided under Naruto's unshakable calm, replaced by a fearful but resolute determination. Kaneko, ever stoic, simply watched him, her golden eyes reflecting a quiet, waiting intensity. She was a weapon, and she was waiting for him to aim her. This isn't a rescue mission, Naruto began, his voice low and precise, the voice of a commander briefing his squad. A rescue mission is reactive. This is a counter-assault. We're not just saving those people. We are dismantling Rainer's entire operation in this town. Tonight, he turned to Kaneko. Your distraction needs to be loud, precise, and painful. Donasek and Calawarner escaped. They will be Rainer's lieutenants in this. They'll be overconfident, thinking their numbers give them an advantage. You will not go to the church. You will go to their nest. He paused, his gaze sharp. Do you know where it is? Kaneko nodded once. I followed their scent after the fight. An old, abandoned warehouse by the docks. The energy signature is strong. Good, Naruto said with a grim smile. You are faster and stronger than any of them one-on-one. You are going to hit their base of operations. You are not going for a protracted battle. You are a force of nature. Go in, cause as much damage as you can in 60 seconds, and get out. Your objective is to draw forces away from the church. Make them split their numbers. Make them panic. He then turned to Asia, his expression softening. Your job is the most important. And the hardest. You have to wait. When I get the hostages out, some of them might be injured. I'll bring them to a secondary location. A small park 3 blocks south of here. He slid a cheap map from the hotel's welcome binder across the table and circled a spot. I need you there. Be my medic. Can you do that? He was giving her a role, a purpose. He wasn't telling her to hide. He was making her a vital part of the mission. It was a gesture of respect for her power and her spirit. Her eyes, though still frightened, shone with resolve. Yes, I can do that. Good, Naruto said, his gaze shifting between them. Kaneko, you move in 10 minutes. Asia, you leave now. Be careful. Stick to the well-lit streets. Go. Without a word, Asia gathered her courage and her suitcase and slipped out the door. Kaneko gave him a single, sharp nod, a silent acknowledgement of her orders, before dissolving into a flash of demonic energy. He was alone again, the silence of the room pressing in. This is a reckless plan, Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind. You're relying on a rookie brawler and a girl who has never seen a real fight. I'm relying on their strengths, Naruto shot back in his thoughts. Kaneko is a living battering ram and Asia has a good heart. It's more than enough. He stood up, stretching the stiffness from his limbs. Besides, being reckless is my specialty. Rias Grimori threw a crystal glass against the wall of the clubroom, where it shattered with a sharp, explosive sound. He's gone, she seethed, her demonic aura crackling around her, making the lamps flicker. He took the nun and vanished. He thinks he can just operate in my territory, defy my will, and face the fallen angels alone. It appears so, Akeno said, a thoughtful, almost admiring smile on her lips as she watched a small bat-like familiar dissolve back into the shadows. And it appears the fallen have taken hostages at the abandoned church. They've called him out. It's a trap, Kiba stated, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword. They'll overwhelm him with numbers. He's skilled, but he's one person. His face was a mask of conflict. His loyalty was to Rias, but his knightly instincts screamed that leaving Naruto to fight alone was a profound dishonor. We cannot intervene, Rias said, her voice strained with the effort of holding onto her pride. He made his choice. He wanted to do this alone. Rias, Akeno said, her tone suddenly serious, all traces of her usual playfulness gone. Think, if he fails, you lose the most powerful, albeit rebellious, pawn any devil has ever seen. The fallen capture a rare sacred gear, strengthening their position in this town. We look weak and foolish. If, by some miracle, he succeeds, she let the words hang in the air for a moment. If he succeeds alone, after you abandoned him, what does that do to your authority? To the loyalty of your own peerage? He won't just be a rival. He'll be a legend, and you will be the arrogant noble who stood by and watched. We lose either way. The only way we win is if we are there. Rhea stared at her queen, the cold, hard logic of Akino's words cutting through her rage and pride. She was right. He had checkmated her without even being in the room. Where is Kaneko? Rhea demanded, her voice tight. Akino's smile returned, this time with a hint of mischief. My familiar lost track of her. But I have a feeling she's not sitting idle. Rhea closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and made her decision. Kiba, Akino, prepare for battle. We are not going to save Issei Hyodo. We are going to secure a volatile situation in our territory. The distinction was for her pride, and everyone in the room knew it, but it was enough. We move now. The abandoned church was a skeleton against the moonless sky. Naruto lay flat on the roof of an adjacent building, his body cloaked in shadow. He closed his eyes, filtering out the noise of the city, and focused. He could feel them. 10 distinct energy signatures inside. One was Rainer, her power a discordant shriek of arrogance and rage. The other 9 were her grunts, their energy signatures weaker. Buzzing like angry flies. He could feel the 6 hostages, their life forces flickering with terror. He could feel the cold, dormant magic of a ritual circle, laid out on the chancel floor. He reached for the burner phone. Now, he texted to Kaneko. Miles away, at the docks, Kaneko stood before a rust-eaten warehouse. She took a deep breath, and the air around her seemed to solidify. She drew her senjutsu into her fists, her small frame radiating an aura of immense, earth-shattering power. She didn't bother with the door. She simply punched the wall. The resulting explosion was catastrophic. A 10-foot section of corrugated metal and concrete disintegrated, the shockwave ripping through the building. Screams of surprise and pain erupted from within. Danesik and 2 other fallen, who had been lazily playing cards, were thrown across the room. Kaneko walked through the hole she had made, her eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. Surprise, she said in her deadpan voice. Back at the church, Rainer felt the flare of power and the sudden, panicked cries of her subordinates through her communication link. 2 of her guards inside the church exchanged a nervous look. What was that? One of them asked. Danesik is under attack at the warehouse. A voice screamed through their magical link. It's the Grimoire Rook. She's tearing the place apart. Rainer's face contorted in a snarl of fury. 2 of you, go. Reinforce them. Kill that little cat. 2 of the fallen angels sprouted their wings and burst out of the church, flying at top speed towards the docks. It was exactly what Naruto had planned. Her forces were split. Her attention was divided. He slipped off the roof, a silent wraith, and melded with the deep shadows at the base of the church wall. He found a stained glass window. Its latch corroded with age. A moment's pressure, a faint click, and he was inside, moving through the cavernous sanctuary like a whisper. He saw the scene clearly. Rainer stood before the altar. Her arms crossed, radiating impatience. 7 fallen now stood guard over the 6 terrified hostages, who were huddled together near the front pews. He didn't attack. He reached for his demonic power. Not for a fistful of energy, but for a single, refined thread. He wove it into a simple illusion, a shinobi art adapted to this new world. A flicker of movement in the bell tower. A shadow that seemed to detach itself from the wall near the back entrance. It was enough. What was that? One of the guards snapped, whirling around. Go check it out, another commanded. 2 more peeled away, heading towards the back of the church. 5 guards left. Naruto moved. He used a body flicker, a short, sharp burst of demonic energy to propel him across the floor in a silent, untraceable blur. He appeared behind the rearmost guard, his hand chopping down on the fallen's neck. The angel crumpled without a sound. 4 left. He flowed behind a row of pews as the others turned, alerted by the faint thud of the body. He was a phantom. One of the guards raised a hand to form a light spear. A pebble, flicked with pinpoint accuracy from the shadows, struck his wrist, breaking his concentration. In that split second of confusion, Naruto was on him, a knee to the spine, a palm-heel strike to the base of the skull. 3 left. Show yourself, coward, Rainer shrieked, her eyes darting around the sanctuary. Her rage battling her growing fear. She was in a cage with a ghost, and he was hunting her pack. The 3 remaining guards foolishly clustered together for protection. It was the last mistake they would make. Naruto dropped a single, smoke-producing pellet he had fashioned from stolen cleaning supplies at the hotel, a classic ninja trick. The church filled with thick, acrid smoke. The fallen choked, their vision obscured. Naruto moved through the smoke like a shark through water. He could feel their positions, their panic. 3 swift, brutal takedowns followed in rapid succession. The sounds of struggle were short, sharp, and decisively one-sided. When the smoke cleared, all 7 of Rainer's guards were lying unconscious or groaning on the floor. Naruto stood in the center of the aisle, between her and the hostages, the dust motes swirling around him in the moonlight filtering through the broken windows. He hadn't used a single flashy technique. It had been a cold, silent, terrifyingly efficient dismantling of her forces. "It's just you and me now, Rainer," he said, his voice a low, chilling promise. She stared at him, her beautiful face a mask of disbelief and pure, undiluted hatred. You insect, I'll tear you apart." She erupted in an aura of power, 6 black wings beating the air, a spear of brilliant, holy light forming in her hand. The hostages screamed, cowering behind him. Naruto didn't even flinch. He simply settled into a low fighting stance. "You can try." Just as she was about to charge, the main doors of the church were blasted open. Rias Grimori stood silhouetted in the doorway, her crimson hair flowing around her, flanked by Akeno, who was crackling with lightning, and Kiba, his demonic sword drawn and ready. "Rainer." Rias's voice boomed with authority. "This is Grimori territory. Your game is over." Rainer froze, her head snapping between Naruto and the newly arrived devils. She was trapped. Naruto didn't look back at Rias. He kept his eyes locked on his primary target, a faint, annoyed sigh escaping his lips. "Took you long enough," he muttered under his breath. The stage was now crowded, and the real battle was about to begin. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Reckoning and the Choice. The air in the church was a taut wire, vibrating with the competing energies of devils, a fallen angel, and one very determined transmigrated shinobi. Rias Grimori stood in the shattered doorway, a portrait of noble fury, her peerage arrayed behind her like avatars of destruction. Rainer, trapped between this new, overwhelming force and the silent predator who had just dismantled her entire squad, was a cornered animal, her fear curdling into a desperate, homicidal rage. Naruto didn't turn. He didn't acknowledge Rias's grand entrance. His focus was a razor's edge, aimed squarely at Rainer. Her late arrival was an irritation, a complication, not a rescue. "Your timing, as always, is impeccable, Grimori," he said. His voice laced with a dry sarcasm that cut deeper than any insult. "I am securing my territory, issei," Rias retorted, striding into the church, her heels clicking on the stone floor. "Something you know nothing about. Stand down and let us handle this." She was trying to re-establish the hierarchy, to reclaim the narrative. Naruto didn't even grant her a glance. "The situation," he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl as he took a half-step towards Rainer, as already handled. That was when Rainer broke. She saw the devils advancing, the boy preparing to pounce. She knew she was beaten. She knew she would not escape. So she chose to lash out, to burn the whole world down on her way out. With a psychotic shriek, she didn't lunge at Naruto or Rias. She spun around, her light spear changing shape, elongating into a whip of pure energy, and lashed it out towards the huddled, screaming hostages. "If I can't have my prize, then you can all die with me," she screamed. Kiba shouted a warning and lunged forward, his knight's speed a blur. Akeno raised her hands, lightning crackling around her fingertips. But they were too far away. The whip was too fast. The world seemed to lurch. To the devils, it was as if reality itself skipped a beat. One moment, Naruto was standing in the center aisle. The next, he was gone, and an instant later, he reappeared directly in front of the hostages. His back to them, his arm outstretched. He hadn't just moved fast. He had moved with an impossible, instantaneous burst of speed that seemed to defy physics. A demonic-powered body flicker, refined by a lifetime of shinobi experience. He met the light whip not with his hand, but with the scorched sleeve of his uniform. The holy energy hissed and seared, eating through the fabric and biting into his skin. But his arm didn't move. He held the line. He was their shield. With his other hand, he reached inside his soul and opened the tap. Not a trickle this time. He let the river flow. Now we're talking. Kurama's voice snarled with glee in his mind. A volcanic eruption of crimson energy exploded from him. It wasn't the wild, uncontrolled outburst from the park. This was different. This was shaped by his will. The raw, malevolent Yuki coalesced around him, forming a bubbling, semi-transparent shroud of pure power. A single, long, fox-like tail of the same energy swished through the air behind him, carving a shallow groove in the stone floor. His blue eyes burned a venomous red, his pupils slitting. The sheer pressure of his presence brought everyone, devil and fallen angel alike, to their knees. The air grew thick and heavy, and a primal, terrifying fear wormed its way into the hearts of all present. It was the aura of a tailed beast, a living calamity. And it was being worn like a cloak by a high school boy. Rhea stared, her crimson eyes wide with a terror that eclipsed all pride. Kiba and Akino were frozen, their own formidable powers feeling like a candle next to a raging sun. Rainer, her light whip dissolving against the crimson shroud, looked upon him, and for the first time, she felt true despair. She was not facing a fledgling devil. She was facing a god of destruction. You threatened them, Naruto's voice echoed, distorted and layered, a human sound overlaid with a demonic, bestial roar. You threatened innocent people. In my presence. He moved. The single tail of energy lashed out like a whip, faster than the eye could follow. It wrapped around Rainer's ankle and yanked. She was pulled off her feet, slamming hard against the chancel steps. Before she could even cry out, he was on her, one hand gripping her throat, lifting her effortlessly into the air. The crimson cloak receded slightly, but his eyes still burned red. You wanted a war, he snarled. His face inches from hers. You wanted to see what a real monster looks like. Here I am. He drew back his free hand, his fist now wreathed in the same bubbling, crimson energy. It wasn't a jutsu. It was simpler, cruder. It was the pure, concentrated rage of a biju focused into a single point. He punched her. The blow connected with her stomach, and the resulting shockwave was catastrophic. A deafening boom echoed through the church. The air itself seemed to shatter. Rainer's body was flung backward like a ragdoll, smashing through the stone altar and embedding itself in the far wall of the apse. She didn't scream. She just fell, broken and unconscious, a plume of black feathers drifting down from her shattered wings. Silence. The crimson energy dissipated, flowing back into Naruto as if it had never been there. His eyes faded back to their normal, piercing blue. He stood panting slightly, the massive expenditure of power taking its toll on the unprepared body. He looked at the unconscious Rainer, then turned his attention to the hostages. He walked over to them, his expression softening, the terrifying monster replaced once again by the calm protector. It's over, he said. His voice normal again. You're all safe. He began to untie them, his movements quick and efficient. The Grimoire peerage could only stare, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. That power, it was not demonic. It was not holy. It was older, wilder, a primordial force that had no place in their ordered world. As Naruto finished freeing the last hostage, Rias finally found her voice. What was that? She asked, her tone a mixture of awe and fear. A last resort, he answered without looking at her. He addressed the hostages. There is a young woman, a blonde nun, waiting in the park 3 blocks south of here. Her name is Asia. She will help you. Go now. Dazed and terrified, the men and women stumbled out of the church and into the night. Now, only the key players remained. Rias, Akino, and Kiba. Naruto, and the broken form of Rainer. We will take the prisoner, Rias said, regaining a fraction of her composure. She will be Ken to the underworld and judged according to devil law. No, Naruto said simply. Rias bristled. No, I am the daughter of a great king. It is my right and my duty. I don't care who you are, Naruto interrupted, finally turning to face her. His gaze was tired but unyielding. This isn't about your laws or your politics. This is about justice. He walked over to the rubble where Rainer lay, abbing her by the tattered remains of her clothing and hauling her back into the center of the church. He dropped her unceremoniously at his feet. Akino's lightning crackled, ready to subdue Rainer if she woke, but she was out cold. Then what do you propose? Kiba asked, his voice respectful. Execution. That would be the easiest solution, Naruto admitted, his eyes hardening. But it's not my decision to make. He pulled out the burner phone and made a call. A few moments later, Asia Argento, escorted by Kaneko, walked nervously into the ruined church. She saw the devastation, the unconscious fallen angels, and the broken form of her tormentor lying at Naruto's feet. She stopped, her hands flying to her mouth. Asia, Naruto said gently. She is the one who hurt you. Who used you? Who would have killed you? Reaincarnated wants to take her for political reasons. Some might say she deserves to die. But I believe the choice of what happens next belongs to you. Everyone stared. He was giving the ultimate authority. The power of life and death, to the victim. It was a concept so alien to the rigid, power-based hierarchy of the devils that Rias was left momentarily speechless. Asia looked at Rainer, at the woman who had manipulated her, threatened her, and treated her as less than human. Tears streamed down her face, a torrent of fear, pain, and pity. She took a deep, shuddering breath. I do not want her to die, she said, her voice trembling but clear. Killing her would make me like her. But she cannot be allowed to do this to anyone else. Ever again. She looked at Naruto, her green eyes filled with a strength he had not seen before. Can you take her wings? Can you take away the power she uses to hurt people? It was a judgment worthy of a sage. Not vengeance, but justice. Not cruelty, but the removal of a threat. Naruto looked at the unconscious fallen angel. Stripping a being of its power source was a complex procedure, but the principles of sealing were universal. He knelt down, placing a hand on Rainer's back, where her wings connected. He channeled the last of his demonic energy, not as a weapon, but as a tool. He pictured the flow of energy, the pathways that connected her to her power, and with the surgical precision of a master sealer, he severed them. Rainer's body convulsed. Her 6 black wings flared out one last time, then dissolved into motes of black light. Fading into nothingness, the arrogant, powerful aura she possessed vanished, leaving behind only the weak, terrified life force of a mortal. He stood up. It's done. He had not killed her. He had done something worse in the eyes of a creature like Rainer. He had made her insignificant. He looked at Rias, his expression leaving no room for argument. She's yours now, a powerless fallen angel. I'm sure your family can find some use for her. My part in this is over. He turned and put a comforting arm around Asia's shoulders, guiding her out of the ruined church and into the clean night air. Kaneko falling into step beside them. They didn't look back. Reaincarnated watched them go, her mind a whirlwind. He had defied her, protected an innocent, won a battle on his own terms. Wielded a power beyond her comprehension, and dispensed a justice more profound than her own laws. He was not her pawn. He was not her rival. He was something else entirely. And he now common. Dead the unwavering loyalty of her rook and the person he had just rescued. He was building his own peerage, right under her nose, without any evil pieces at all. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The first stones of a new foundation. The walk back from the church was a quiet, somber procession. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind the bone-deep weariness of battle and the raw, exposed nerves of a near-death experience. Naruto kept a steadying arm around Asia, who was still trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer emotional weight of the night. She had faced her tormentor and, when given the choice, had chosen mercy over vengeance. It was an act of profound strength, and he felt a deep, swelling pride for her. Kaneko walked on his other side, a small, silent guardian, her presence a comforting anchor in the dark. They didn't go back to the hotel. It was compromised, a temporary shelter that had outlived its usefulness. Instead, Naruto led them through the quiet, sleeping streets of the residential district. Stopping in front of a modest, 2-story house. Issei Hyodo's house. Here, Kaneko asked, her eyebrow raising a fraction of an inch. It's the last place anyone would look for us now, Naruto replied. Rias thinks I've gone to ground somewhere else. The fallen are broken. For tonight, this is the safest place in the city. He opened the door to a dark and silent home. I's parents were away on one of their frequent trips, a convenient fact from the borrowed memories. He ushered the girls inside, the familiar scent of home feeling alien and distant. This was Issei's life, Issei's house. Not his. But for now, it would serve as a sanctuary. He flicked on the lights in the living room. Make yourselves at home. Asia, the guest room is upstairs. Kaneko, you can take my room. I'll take the couch. You are hurt, Asia said, her gaze fixed on the raw, angry burn on his arm, which had reopened when he'd used Kurama's chakra. Let me heal you again. Properly this time, he nodded, too tired to argue, and sat on the sofa. As she knelt in her gentle, green light began to work its painful magic, Kaneko disappeared into the kitchen. She returned a few minutes later with 3 steaming mugs of tea. She handed one to Asia, one to Naruto, and kept one for herself, curling up in a nearby armchair. No one spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, companionable. It was the shared quiet of soldiers after a battle, of survivors after a storm. They were a strange, mismatched trio, a transmigrated ninja messiah, an excommunicated saint, and a stoic cat demon. But in that small living room, under the warm glow of a single lamp, they felt like a family. A new, strange, but fiercely loyal family. When Asia finished healing his arm, the skin was perfectly smooth, all trace of injury gone. The internal, cellular war between the holy and demonic energies had been agonizing, but he had borne it without a sound. Thank you, Asia, he said, his voice soft. He looked at her, then at Kaneko. Both of you. I couldn't have done this without you. We were a team, Kaneko stated simply, as if it were the most obvious fact in the world. Asia just offered a small, watery, but genuine smile. For the first time since arriving in this foreign country, she felt safe. She felt like she belonged. In the underworld, in a grand, obsidian chamber within the Grimoire family estate. The mood was far less serene. A full-length magical mirror showed the still image of Naruto, his arm around Asia, walking away from the church. Sears X Lucifer, the current ruler of the underworld and Rias's older brother, stared at the image, his usual charming smile absent. Beside him, the formidable head of the Grimoire clan, Lord Grimoire, stroked his beard, his expression a mixture of deep concern and profound intrigue. Rias stood before them, having just given her full, unvarnished report. She had omitted nothing. Not her initial arrogance, not Naruto's defiance, not his terrifying display of power. And not his final, compassionate judgment. He then severed her connection to her power and handed her over. Rias finished, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt. He declared Ossia Argento under his protection and has established a sphere of influence within my territory. Lord Grimoire grunted, a deep, rumbling sound. This boy, this Issei Hyodo, he wields the power of a Biju. A creature of legend from a world completely separate from our own. He possesses the mind of a master strategist and the will of a king. And you, my daughter, have made him your pawn. He shook his head slowly. This is a complication of a magnitude we have not seen in centuries. What do we do? Rias asked, the question directed at her brother. Sears X turned away from the mirror, a thoughtful, calculating light in his violet eyes. We do nothing, he said, his voice calm. Nothing, Rias exclaimed, shocked. He has defied my authority, acted independently. Quote, he has also eliminated a rogue fallen angel cell, saved a powerful and unique sacred gear user from our enemies, and proven himself to be a force of immense power, Sears X countered, his voice gentle but firm. Rias, you tried to fit a dragon into a birdcage. It didn't work. Now, we must learn to coexist with the dragon. He smiled, a genuine, almost excited smile. This is not a crisis. This is an opportunity. A player of unknown origin and unfathomable power has just appeared on the board. He is not bound by our rules, our history, or our prejudices. He acts according to his own moral code, a code that, so far, has led him to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. So we just let him do as he pleases? Lord Grimoire asked, skeptical. For now, yes, Sears X affirmed. We will watch. We will learn. Rias, he said, his gaze locking with his sister's. Your mission has changed. You are no longer his master. You are our ambassador. Get to know him. Understand him. Find out what he wants. And, if at all possible, try to make him a true ally to our cause. An ally, Rias, not a servant. The command was clear. The old approach was a failure. A new, far more delicate game was about to begin. Back in the quiet house, sleep had finally claimed Asia and Kaneko. Naruto sat alone on the sofa, the silence of the night pressing in on him. He closed his eyes, retreating to the familiar, watery expanse of his mindscape. Kurama was waiting, his massive form radiating a grudging approval. You handled that well, brat, the fox rumbled. You used my power with control. You protected your pack. You even managed to not get yourself killed. High praise, coming from you, Naruto said with a tired smile. He looked up at the colossal bars of the cage, at the swirling, cosmic seal that held the bulk of his and Kurama's power in check. We're still handicapped, though. That little display took almost everything this body could handle. If a real threat shows up, someone on the level of the Demon King Searsex, or a Seraph. We're not ready. No, Kurama agreed. We're not, but we have a path forward. The fox's giant, slitted eye gleamed. The little nun, her holy power. When Chi clashed with your demonic energy and my Yuki, I felt it. A resonance. A chaotic, violent fusion that created a new, temporary energy. It was unstable, but incredibly potent. Naruto's eyes widened as he understood the implication. You think, we can learn to combine them? It would be like trying to braid lightning, Kurama admitted. Dangerous, potentially fatal, but if you could master it, if you could learn to harmonize the demonic energy you were given, the holy energy of the girl, and our own chakra, you would create a power that this world has never seen before. A power that transcends their petty factions. You wouldn't just be an anomaly, Naruto. You would be a new law of nature. The idea was staggering. It was audacious. It was insane. It was perfect. He wasn't just a visitor in this world anymore. He wasn't just surviving. He was putting down roots. He had people to protect, a pack to build. He had found a new purpose. He would need a new kind of power to fulfill it. He looked out the living room window at the quiet suburban street, at the moon hanging in the alien sky. He was no longer just Naruto Uzumaki, the seventh Hokage of a world that was gone. He was Issei Hyodo, a name he was slowly beginning to accept as his own mask. He was a devil, a Jinchuriki, a protector. He was the center of a new, growing family. He had lost his home, his past, and the future he had fought so hard to build. But here, in this strange new world, he had found a new one. The foundation was small, just 3 lonely souls huddled together in a borrowed house. But it was a start. And Naruto Uzumaki had always been good at building things from the ground up. A faint smile touched his lips as the first rays of dawn began to peek over the horizon. The night was over. A new day, and a new life, was beginning. Chapter 10 End.